should add myself to the stream and then I'm part of it. And if there's anybody out there, give me a sound check. Otherwise, we'll just go silent for a while. So this is a new series we'll be doing on Friday mornings called The Best Of. And there's a bunch of good stuff out there that isn't garbage. And we're going to go dig into it and then rate it or judge it or whatever we're going to do. So the first one we're going to look at is the Mic Drop podcast. Don't care about saving that. Let's go double check, make sure that we're actually streaming. Don't care about saving that. All right, sounds like we're streaming, so we'll dig in. So I guess I could have just left that open. We'll go down here and we'll click on our own video again, and we'll click on the link to the channel that we're talking about today. Mic Drop is a cool podcast that is out of Texas. So Mike Ritland is a SEAL, or was a SEAL? I don't know how to say that. So anyway, he was a SEAL and a dog handler. Oh, here, if you want to jump in. We were going to do this one as a thing, but I decided to just start doing these. So Ghost is out there. And then I'll delete that link if you got time to jump in. Anyway, so Mike Ritland is a SEAL or was a SEAL and then a dog handler. And then a lot of these SEALs and stuff are writing books and having businesses and stuff in order to keep doing something. And I guess a couple of them are doing podcasts and interviewing each other as entrepreneurs and stuff. And I don't think Mike was the first to do this, but he's the first that I caught on to and started to watch. So I started digging into him earlier this year, and I think I don't know how long it took. It took a while because he's got a lot of podcasts. We'll dig into him here. But basically, whenever I discovered him, I listened to the first couple that I listened to, which weren't the first of his podcasts. They were just random ones that for some reason I decided to listen to. I'll see if I remember which ones they were as we go through them. And then basically just started from one and started listening to them all. They're great. They're long format, and they're consistent in the respect that they're similar in the respect that he starts out each podcast in a similar way, asking some unique questions. And then he includes aspects in a long format meaning like 3 hours, in a long format interview or conversation. They'll usually talk about morning routines, a lot of times health and nutrition and diet and that kind of thing. Exercise, a little bit more on diet than exercise, it seems like, but often exercise if that's a factor of the person's mission or what they're doing in life, and then their entrepreneurial experience and successes and failures, which are awesome. And then, of course, their combat experience. Most of these people that he interviews, I think all of them, have combat experience in various ways. And it took him a little while to get out of the Navy and start interviewing people besides Navy people. But once he started doing that, they started getting a little bit more diverse. But Ghost just jumped in. I think most of his, you've listened to all of them?
What's that?
Have you listened to all of the episodes?
I mean, not like in a row or sequential or anything, but I probably have listened to at least 95% of them, probably.
And that's the thing. I mean, there's something comes up and you miss one and you don't realize it or something. But then they're long format, so they're not like you just sit there and listen to them. But anyway, out of the 95, I would think, most of them are combat experience or adjacent, like people that have either been in combat because that was their job or been in combat because it was their job in some other way, like a translator, journalist, or some other thing that still ended up being in a battle or next to a battle or whatever, living with people in battles. But anyway, so aside from that, then they'll kind of usually plug or let the person describe whatever they're working on now. So for me, this covers a lot of the stuff I'm interested in. As a capitalist, I'm interested in entrepreneurial stuff. As a person who is, I guess, small business owner, I'm interested in listening to all these different experiences. Combat stuff is interesting, hearing how that affected the rest of their things, adventures in life, I guess, is interesting. Listening to the number of people who have experienced such different things and reacted to it, all that becomes part of the adventure when you listen to a series like this. So I'll shut up for a second. Ghost just jumped in, and like say, you've listened to most of these. Just as an overview, how would you describe the Mic Drop podcast?
It's one of those where, to be honest with you, I started a new podcast a few months ago called the Jarhead Podcast. And the best thing that I try to do with that, I got from Ritland. And kind of what you talked about is how does the combat or the military, not necessarily combat necessarily, but the military experience affect the rest of your life afterwards and transitioning into normal life. And that's kind of where I got the idea for the Jarhead was, let's talk about these combat stories. Let's talk about our life in the military, the good, the bad, the ugly. But then how did serving your country affect positively or negatively, mostly it's positive, your life as an entrepreneur or your life after the military? And that's kind of what I like most about it, is hearing the stories. You've heard combat stories left and right from everyone that's been downrange, but most people don't realize how it affects the families at home, how it affects friendships at home, how it affects everything, because you're over downrange and your time almost freezes when you're there. Like you're focused in on your mission. You're there for where from whatever how long you're there, and time kind of stands still because that's what you're in. But back home, life moves on, and I think Ritland does a good job of doing that. He's brought in family members of people to kind of say, hey, this is what it's like to be the wife of a ranger or a SEAL or whatever. The combat stories are great, but the real life stories are what really I enjoy the most. So I think a lot of people want to know what the warriors, what their mindset in life is. And to be one of those guys like a SEAL or a ranger or a beret or any of those guys, that's a tip of the spear. And they look at life differently than normal people. And so it's fun to hear how their thought process worked through life. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Oh yeah, you brought a lot of good stuff up there. So that's one thing, is I guess I should have prefaced that. I'm going to start doing these on Friday mornings as a series, going and digging into people's channels that are awesome, and then trying to do some sort of ranking or top 10 or something of their podcast to get people started on them, right? But with something like this, prefacing it with, it's called Mic Drop. The guy's a SEAL and he's interviewing military people about combat and how that affects other things. I didn't even think that, that I should have brought up that it isn't just about the combat experience. I guess thanks for bringing that out. That it's about the people, and like I was saying, their life after. They will touch on, especially the people that did incredible stuff or are in the news or something, so that there's a reason to want to hear about their specific story, or if that story completely affected their business or something. But it's really about their life, and like you say, the other aspects of it. So it's interesting that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't want people to think that this is just like, if it's a 3-hour podcast, like it's 2 hours of war stories or something. In fact, it's mostly quite the opposite. They're not afraid to touch on stuff because they've all been there, but they don't dwell on it. Most people that been through that kind of stuff, unless you're caught there, unless you're stuck there, you know what I mean? Like, you're not dwelling on it. And they'll I think they have a refreshing, an interesting way. I'm used to World War II veterans when we were kids. They wouldn't talk about nothing, like nothing, ever, nothing, ever. Like, I don't even know how to reiterate that. They didn't talk about it. And I don't know if it's just they didn't, because I don't know. I don't know. They didn't talk about it. Korean, they pretty much didn't talk about it. I didn't know that many. And then the non-people, it was tough for them to talk about it. And they talked about it, and they got a lot of grief for talking about it. And then there was nothing for a while. And then there was these guys. And now seeing these guys be able to, the guys and girls, be able to talk about it in like a capable, confident way and not have to be embarrassed or worried about it is cool. When they're talking about their like scars and their damage, right? But when they're talking about the gruesomeness, they're able to talk about that. And it's a little bit interesting if you're not familiar with it. If you're not familiar with hanging out like an EMT or a paramedic or something like that, or an emergency room doctor or a cop maybe, or a fire person, somebody that's like, seeing guard, and they can kind of make light of it or whatever. It's a little bit insight to that realm where you get to hear people who have seen some horrible things and talk about it in a different way because they're kind of used to seeing it. They're calloused over, maybe, is the way somebody would say it. So you get to see a little glimpse of that. But again, it's interesting to me because I'm comparing this to stories from back in the day and just other, I guess, generations of stories like this. So these are super refreshing, super interesting, and they're so strong. Like, these guys know, like, their mental capacities. You hear about, the military and this and that, and sure, there's probably parts of military. I'm sure there's lots of parts of military that are horrible and messed up still, but whatever. But the top end guys, like, they're helping their head as much as they're helping their bodies, and that part's really interesting. So they're getting that insight, and then the same way that these guys are strong coming out of the service and then hitting society or whatever, the world, with capability, right? They're strong in their heads too, and that's super neat to experience. Because again, I'm just so used to vets coming home and they're like, "Oh, okay, thanks guys, here's your medals now. Try not to kill each other," but basically you're left on your own. So it's just so different.
Yeah, and you're bringing up the old World War II and Korean vets, and my grandfather served in Germany under Patton, and he died when I was 13, so I was young. But once again, he never talked about it, and there was a part of me that thinks that once I got out of the Marine Corps, had he still been alive, then maybe then he and I could have a discussion. Some of the stuff that he did and saw, some of the stuff that I did and I saw, and have that, but we never got that opportunity. But they didn't talk about it. The Korean guys didn't talk about it because a lot of the Korean guys were the same guys that were in World War II. So there's a lot of overlap in those two wars. The Vietnam guys coming home. Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
No, you hit it dead on. Most of those guys from Korea already were either in World War II, so they weren't going to talk about it, or they were the little kids and they saw that the other guys weren't talking about it, so they weren't going to talk about it.
Exactly. And then, like you said, the Vietnam guys, they came home and got treated like trash, being called baby killers and all that. I think what's interesting, and I had this discussion with a friend of mine who was an Army Ranger and at Benghazi and all that stuff. And he and I were talking one day, and he was like, I said, why is it that a lot of SEALs and guys are writing books and doing movies about them? And he's like, honestly, it didn't come from them. They were almost shown to so much money that they couldn't say no to, hey, write this book or let's do this movie, because I think that the American people, from maybe like what the first Gulf War in the early 90s, that was kind of the first war that was on TV like 24/7 with CNN. And so I think people got enlightened they got to see the military stuff. They never had seen that stuff before. And I think that there's a lot of it that the American people are interested in what goes on in these wars, because you're talking about normal human beings that all of a sudden were trained to go sacrifice their lives for a bigger thing, which is the flag. And that's a concept that a lot of people don't truly understand. And I think that's fascinating to people. So I think that the American people wanting to read these books and wanting to see these movies of the behind the scenes stuff is kind of one of those things where I don't think that a lot of the guys that are writing the books are set out to say, hey, I want to go join the SEALs so I can go write a book or make a movie. I think they're involved in crazy stuff. In the American people, there's that, I don't know if you want to call it a demand, but there's that want from the American people to kind of hear these stories,
An interest. That guy, Jack Carr, will tell you that he knew he was going to be a writer, and then whatever he did led him learn stuff to be a better writer. But yeah, everybody else, I think there's a lot of stuff you said there. So just going backwards or whatever, I think what it is also, there's always been people writing about their experiences or whatever, but once the first couple of them started to write about this current, whatever you want to call the global war on terror, the war on Afghanistan, or the war in Iran or Iraq, whatever you want to say, however you want to divide all that current stuff up. Like I say, the first couple of books or whatever, and like you said, then there was interest. And I would just, when you first started saying that this is new, I don't think it's new. I think back in Nam, there was reporters think about it. There was like all those reporters that I don't know if they called them embedded back then, but there would be like somebody under fire, in a helicopter wash, yelling about something. Maybe not in combat always, but there was some reporters who were getting that news, and that was the thing. Vietnam was the first one where the news wasn't propaganda, right? It wasn't like pro-war, so it wasn't just all rah 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 like it was with
they
the
were
other
showing
wars.
the dead bodies. They were doing the body counts. They were showing the dead
Right.
names, all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were trying to cause influence and not let the government just dictate. Here, the media, we're going to tell you what to promote, what am I trying to say, like what to relate. But instead, they said, here's what the government told us to tell you, and here's what our reporters are seeing. And I don't know, that's definitely a division and a rift. And, that's all other discussion. But to just to kind of compare it or whatever, and I don't know what happened. Well, actually, Nam was that. And then this was really the next one after. And like you said, we've had embedded reporters and just rogue people. In fact, Mike has interviewed a couple of the reporter people that kind of give you some insight as to what it's like to just say, fuck it, I'm going to go over there with a camera and find out what's going on, right? So let's get into it. So there's 70 something podcasts, and there's so much that is awesome about this one. I'm doing this one first because because there's so much involved. So we've talked about the war side of it. There's the entrepreneurial side, and you're a entrepreneurial person. You've done lots of different hats. It's not like your ghost I'm talking to isn't like a dude who got like one career and then got one job and is sitting there working on retirement or whatever. You've done some different things, and you've had successes and failures along the way, and then you continue to move on. And I think that's one of the funnest things about this is, I guess the people he interviews I would say 80% of them are small business owners, or at least deal with, or maybe, are consultants or something. So most of them are doing something like that. And he focuses on that as a small business owner. And because it's not like he talks to all SEALs. In fact, some of these people are pilots. As I'm looking through the list here, some of them are different branches. Some of them aren't even military. But again, if they all have a common thing, it's that they're ambitious and doing stuff, moving, or what's the word, like, I don't know what the word is. So anyway, they'll always have that like common thread throughout the conversations. And then there's the health side, and the diet and the exercise, and that part of it is pretty awesome. It's not so much in there because if it was in there every single episode, I wouldn't be listening. Like, I couldn't handle it every episode. And there are a couple where like the person's a fitness trainer or whatever reason, like fitness or diet or something is their main thing. And Mike will sit there and talk to him because he can go on and on, but he can tell it's not his main thing either. So he's not going to harp on it. But because he touches on it enough, I think that's interesting to be able to compare with probably 50 different people. They're like, just in a 3-hour conversation, a little bit about their diet, a little bit about their exercise routines and stuff. Just gives you so much intel on how some really successful and effective people are getting it done without, obviously they all started with being physically fit for the most part. A lot of them have had injuries, I guess. I shouldn't say that. A bunch of them had injuries or just, got older or whatever and aren't top physical specimens, but they're keeping themselves healthy by, whatever kind of stuff they talk about.
I think that for me, the biggest part that I enjoy, and it's kind of what you just touched on, they're all kind of quote unquote success stories almost, you know what I'm saying? Where these people have gone through things in their lives that some people don't come home from. They're able to come home. Some of them have gone through depression, through PTSD. They've gone through injuries. All of these people have gone through something in their lives that could be a setback for most people. And they found a way to fight through the injury, the pain, the depression, all that stuff. A lot of them will have drinking problems and all of that. And they fight through all of that. And the biggest thing that I enjoy is the success. Is we got through those dark times. We started our small business up or whatever. We got involved in entrepreneurial, and now we're successful. So the success stories of being able to overcome adversity is really, I think, what the podcast is mostly that I enjoy about.
And then, that's true. I don't want to discredit it, but I just don't want to. There's nothing to add to that. And then the dogs, of course, he's a dog handler. So not everybody has a dog story, but if they've got a dog story, he'll ask it. And he doesn't harp on it. He doesn't tell you how to train your dog or nothing. But it's cool to have. It's cool to have. That kind of consistent focus, I guess, persistent focus on the dog if it's there. There's a couple of ads in it, which are easy enough to fast forward through, but I mean, honestly, his ads are for his CBD products, which are for the dogs or for old people, and are probably fine. I would recommend them. I mean, why not? It's funding an awesome podcast, if nothing else. But I mean, I can't imagine there's anything wrong with him if he's feeding them to his own dogs and stuff. And then
I'm actually starting to get into the CBD gummies because of my chronic pain and back and knees. I've been told by a lot of people that CBD, like gummies and CBD oil, helps. So I'm starting to do that myself, and a lot of it came from him. From like he talks about it. A couple other buddies of mine that use it, they say it helps. It doesn't fix anything, but it helps mask that everyday like dull pain that never leaves. So yeah, he's one of the reasons why I even started thinking about using CBD.
and he's not like a hippie where he's like, oh yeah, this is an excuse to wipe a joint on my arm or whatever. He's kind of reluctant. You could tell he's been reluctant, at least through the shows. And then eventually he's like, okay, he must have tried it or his dogs must have liked it. The thing for me is whenever I bought the dog food for Oro when he was old, I could tell it worked. So I knew it worked. Anyway,
Yeah,
so let's get into it. There's a lot to his podcast. They're 3 hours. They start out about an hour, I guess, but then they get into like 3 hour. He comfortably does 3 hours. He'll do four. I mean, there might even be a 5 hour podcast in here that he broke up, but no problem doing a long podcast. He doesn't rush people. He gives people a chance to talk, I guess, and he's not like exploiting sad stories. Some of the people have really got nothing much. Like I can just look at one of the guys on the screen here is kind of boring. He doesn't do anything. Some of the other people, like you said, things that would kill a regular human that they somehow live through and now not just live through it, but just thrive in, right? And so he does have some that he touches on that are just amazing stories. I mean, some of them, I guess, we won't talk on every single one to spoil them or nothing, but yeah, some of them are amazing. Some of them aren't, though. And that's the thing. It's not like he's only exploiting. So it's like every week, or I guess it's once a month now. It's not like every month you've got to, get your stress levels all up listening to some horrible story. Sometimes it's just an interesting or inspirational type of thing.
yeah, and a lot of it, and that's human life. I mean, there are success stories, there are failure stories, and he's not afraid to shine the light on both of them. And I think ideally, what he's trying to do is, whether it's not to the public or I think it's other veterans also, I think he's trying to show other veterans, hey, just because you're maybe in a hole right now doesn't mean you have to stay in that hole. And just because you're thriving right now doesn't mean that can all be taken away with you in a split second. So enjoy life, live life for the moment. And if you just try to do that, be a good person every day, things will happen for you. And I think that's a goal in all of it, whether it's a heart wrenching story or an awesome story. He tries to bring humanity out of the warriors to say, look, not everyone is this famous hero. There are people that have serious problems, go through really bad times in their life. But, one, you've got people here to help you, but two, it can get better. So, I mean, like I said, I found him through a Jocko podcast. I'm sure you probably watched Jocko a little bit or at
No,
least heard of
that's the
him.
thing. No, it's interesting because I've never watched him. He talks about it all the time, and I guess that's where he got started. I
Yeah,
know who
I
that
think
guy
so.
is
Yeah.
just from seeing him on Instagram, but I don't follow that guy. He seems like way too much of a spaz for me, so I don't even
He
start
is.
watching.
He is. And that's why I started watching Ritland, because I was watching Jocko, and there's some good ones with Jocko. There's some really
Oh,
bad
I
ones with
imagine
Jocko.
they're probably all good. That's what I'm saying. Like I couldn't handle watching a podcast that's like every time fireworks and whistles, and I'm inspired to make a new business. I couldn't handle it. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
And I was watching that, and then this popped up in like the suggested, after one of the Jocko things. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So SEAL canine handler, that's kind of cool. I started watching that, and then he's one of my go-tos now. Like I've probably, there were probably 10 or 12, and you're probably the same way. Everyone's going to have their favorite episodes, And there's probably 10 or 12 episodes that I've listened to 10 times each, just keep kind of going back to certain ones that for some reason it just kind of stuck with me. But yeah, he's great. And there's a lot of, but I really do like you said, he makes the warriors out there humans and they have human stories. And that's really awesome about it,
No, that's perfect, because often you'll get somebody who's like, okay, we got our token warrior. Tell us about how you killed a bunch of people. How many people did you kill? How many was it like killing them? Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Okay, that was our token killer, and now we're gonna go on. And then fuck that, people. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I'm not trying to be a raunchy podcast in the morning, but you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people exploit the people that have done stuff, and Mike is not doing that. So I think that was making it human is a great way to say it. All right, well, with that, let's try to do actually what we're trying to do here. But the problem is it's such a great podcast. I don't want it to get pigeonholed. It's like, oh, this is a bunch of Army dudes talking to each other. In this case, Navy dudes talking to each other. I don't even know if it started like that. I really don't. I don't think it did, because it certainly didn't even kind of go down that path. I just think that it probably gets considered as that because of the guy and the name of the podcast or something. But anyway, let's dig in. I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll just right click and open them in a new window if we both think they would be in our top 10, and then we'll hash them out. So basically, right off the bat, there's 70 of them. They got to be in your top 10 to be considered, because a lot of these are super good. A couple of them, there's no possible way they'd even be considered for me. But like right off the bat, Clint Emerson is the first one.
That's probably a top 3 for me, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say that one's tough because I get it. Basically, Clint is the guy who did the 100 skills or something, and I really like that, and I like Clint. And these guys are like good friends, right? And him and this other guy are like really good friends. Clark, I think. I don't know. So there's a couple of them that are really good friends, and it's a fun podcast to listen to. And it's like drinking a beer on a cold beer on a hot day. You're like, oh wow, I just listened to 2 hours of podcast. It took like 15 seconds. Like what? It didn't
exactly. That's one I tell you I've gone back and listened to a bunch of times. That's one that if you just have a good time, man, that's a good one to listen to.
And it did start the thing off. Now, I listened to that one probably third or fourth because I had watched one and I was like, wow, that was good. I'm going to watch another one. And I didn't think I was ever going to care. So I just picked them randomly and I was like, wow, that was good too. Then I picked somebody who I think I knew and I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm watching this guy's podcast. So for me, it was like the third or fourth podcast to watch. But I was like, dude, that was a good first podcast for like a series or whatever. So
yeah,
then
so,
we get.
So that was like your third. Would you say that was the one that absolutely solidified you of a fan of the podcast? Maybe.
No, because it's Navy. I don't care that much about Navy.
I understand.
But when he started talking to real like Army and stuff, then I was like, okay, this guy's not like just a Navy fanboy. This one, Laura, I was done, dude. By the time I got to Laura, I was already a big fan of the podcast. But I was like, Mike he's a master at talking to people. Anyway, let's get into them. So Nick the Reaper Irving, I think that was a good one, but I don't know. I'm gonna leave mine very loose.
I enjoyed that because people don't know about that Nick is one of the the most, I don't know, deadliest, I hate to use that word. He's one of the most, how do I put it, efficient snipers ever. And his story is pretty cool. I mean,
and
that's a really good one.
See, that's the problem. Both of these have been on twice, and Nick is going to be on in another one, and I like that one better. So that's the problem. Is I don't know if I want to put the one that he was introduced down here. And am I wrong, or was this all three of them?
No. The second one's the much better. I mean, they're both good, but okay. I would say the second one's better than the first one because that's when they kind of dive into it. The first one was like, hey, in case you don't know who the Reaper is, this guy's a badass. The second one's kind of where they dive into other stuff.
Then we get Jake Dobbins. It was a good one, but I'm not putting it in my top 10.
No.
Kristen Beck, Chief Beck.
If it's in the top 10, I'd say it's like at 10. So I mean, it's one of those where maybe. I mean, it was good, but I think there are better ones for sure.
Yeah, that was not in my top.
The sad thing is that there's not a bad one. I mean, there's really not. It sounds bad, but there's really not a bad one.
I got some ones that I didn't like that I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, this is one you don't have to watch. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a couple that I'm definitely not going to go around being like, oh, this is the one to watch or nothing. Then you got Clark Impasto. That's one that I would say, he's a nice guy, but he's like a spaz. Like that one was actually kind of tough for 3 hours. I think that one took 3 hours because he was so off in different directions and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think I don't even know if I finished that one. To be honest with you, I really don't. I don't know if I finished that one.
Then David Andrews. I don't know if I remember this one.
I don't know without maybe watching
Super Bowl champion, Scotch advocate of the foundation, current starting center for New England Patriots. I probably didn't listen too hard to a guy who's a football player.
Oh,
So
I
then
do remember that one. Yeah, I don't think I finished that one either.
Then you get Mitch and Kyle, and this was the only, I think, maybe there was a couple of duels, and two SEALs, I guess, MMA fighter, and motivation. And it's a good one, but I'm not putting it in my top 10. Got Brian Black from It's Tactical, Andy Stumpf. I'm going to start just going through them. So we got 70 of them to go through. Then there was Team Dog. I don't remember that one. It just says Team Dog. That was, I remember.
That's his dog canine training company. And that's probably what that was kind of about, was getting involved and how that whole thing started with being a canine handler in the teams and then going into how he started his company. I enjoyed it because I started watching him, and then by the same time I got my German Shepherd. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, I can get both sides of this guy, which is kind of awesome, you know.
Top 10?
Oh, no, definitely not. Okay. But no, I enjoyed it.
But that one's a good one because I don't know if I've seen that one then, because it's not numbered. Maybe that's why I didn't watch it. So that I'm going to go back and watch that one then to find out more about the dog part. Then you get Jeff Gonzalez. It was interesting if you don't know Jeff.
Yeah, it was good.
Watching. Then you get Debbie Lee. And let's see, this one was the mother of Mark Lee, who is the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq. And they talk about her subsequent trips to the area and how she utilized the grief to help veterans with America's Mighty Warrior. So that's mom who's helping families.
Yeah, that was a really good one, not because it was the most interesting thing, but it was the story of she wanted to go and see where her son died. And that's kind of dark in a way, but it's also, like I said, it enlightened her to want her to do something more, which was kind of a cool story. It started out going, man, I don't know if I want to do that or not. And then I understood why she wanted to do that later on. So it's kind of, it was weird, but yeah, it was good.
I mean, it's an interesting one because for all that, and we live in a world where you can do that, right? And it's neat to hear that a person can say, I want to do that and do it, right? And then well, it's a good one. And it kept me interested. And I would have thought that, just on the surface, I would have been like, oh, no, that one's not going to be all that thrilling. But that's the surprising part about this is he doesn't know ahead of time, I guess, what he's about to do. But, I guess we didn't mention, if you notice in some of these early ones in the thumbnails, they're all in this similar desk. And he doesn't drag this desk around with him. He insists that people, if they're going to be on the podcast, come to wherever he is in Texas, which from what I understand is not necessarily like right in Dallas or something. So people kind of put some effort into getting to his podcast. And I guess what I was saying is he doesn't know what he's going to get out of it, but I guess you kind of do when someone has the dedication to come to your place. They're willing to come there. They've thought about it. Their head's in that direction. It's not the same as when you listen to a podcast and somebody just got done on the stair climber or their kid needs to be fed, and they're in the middle of life and they're just taking a brief moment. This is like people are taking some time away from their lives. They drove out to his place. He feeds them. They looked at the dogs. So these podcasts are set in setting or whatever, like just that's got to be part of it, right? Like there's a reason he's able to talk to these people. They're comfortable and they're there in the conversation with them, not distracted. Maybe that's what it's saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you get Dave. I don't remember liking this one. I can't remember who Dave Rutherford is.
So Rut
I remember
is.
he was all
I
over.
like to. I've met Rut before, but Rut was a teen guy, and he was where Rut became quote unquote famous, if you want to say that, is so you know who Marcus Luttrell is. And Marcus and Morgan Luttrell have their Team Never Quit podcast. Well, Rut was a team guy with both of those, an instructor with those guys, and he was the first host that started the Team Never Quit podcast with Marcus and Morgan Luttrell. So Rut he's a team, like I say, he's a team guy, been around a long time, but he's one of those guys that I like him, but I can't stand him sometimes because he is like full energy all the time, never stops.
Yeah,
But
really
he's funny, but that's where he was is, and then he started his own thing. But he was the original host of Marcus Luttrell's podcast.
Okay. And then you get Dr. James Mitchell. I remember that one being interesting, but it was super slow. He's an older guy.
I don't remember that one. So either I didn't watch it or I didn't watch it long. I don't remember that.
His deal was that he was the guy who was the psychiatrist who was the guy who invented waterboarding or was like consulted with waterboarding. And he talked all about how
he was the guy that took.
He's like the reason they won't talk about what it's like down there.
Level. Yeah, I remember that.
Like the reason we won't talk about it down there is because basically we just put them in rooms and said, okay, you're not going to get killed, so tell us what we want to know. They just put them in like apartments and said, here you go, you don't have to worry about getting killed now. Just tell us what we need to know. And they didn't really torture anybody. They just were nice to them. And since they weren't under the threat of being killed, they told us everything we need to know. That was my take from it.
Yeah, I remember because I think you did too, but. If you go through enhanced interrogation training, it's not
I never
fun.
did anything like that. Oh fuck no! So unless you count.
I don't know if you did or not. But yeah, it's one of those things where I remember going through and being waterboarded, and I remember all I do is I'll just hold my breath. How hard can it be? And then you realize, yeah, there's no such thing as holding your breath. But yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I don't think I finished his. But I remember talking about the enhanced interrogation stuff and all that. So yeah, I think I remember that one. I don't think I put it in my top 10. I don't remember I finished it. So if I didn't finish it, I wouldn't put it in the top 10.
Exactly. Well, okay, but it might be worth going back and listening to it then. Then you get Johnny Walker. Is this the guy, the translator? Johnny Walker is there's a high probability we've been trying to kill each other. The fact that we're sitting together as brothers truly highlights how amazing this nation is. I sit down with Iraqi interpreter, U.S. Special Operations, Johnny Walker, what they called him, I guess, and they talk about what it's like to grow up in Iraq, how he became so heavily involved in SEALs. It was actually pretty neat because he's just like, okay, I'll help out. Next thing you know, he's like hanging out with the dudes, what do they call them, $1 billion minutes? Yeah, exactly. He's doing shit that costs $1 billion a minute to make happen. He's just some dude who's like, okay, yeah, I'll help.
Yeah, I'll do. I'm in. Sign me up. Yeah. Not to get off track here, but you were talking earlier about the embedded journalists and all that. Have you ever seen on HBO? Have you ever seen the series? It's a long time ago, about 10, 15 years ago, called Generation Kill.
I think it's on 2 DVDs, and I've seen it like all the way through once at least. Okay. And I don't know if I've watched it. It's about
first recon and the war and all that, but a lot of it was having to do with, and it's one of the realest, the most real depictions of Marine life in that scenario. But a lot of it revolves around they've got this embedded journalist and how this embedded journalist, real, they had to take care of him, and then how he becomes part of the family and all that stuff. It's kind of a really cool thing.
It was real, right? It wasn't like
it was 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Like Rudy Reyes, Rudy Reyes was in the show, but he was one of the actual first recon guys. He was there, but he also played one of the actors in that show, so he brought a lot of the realness to it.
Oh, okay. And then we get Jack Carr, the writer.
That was a good one.
I'm sure people like that. He's okay, but he's not in my top 10, I don't think. I don't know if I've even picked the top 10 yet. So far, we just have Clint up there. Mario Romero. I'm trying to remember what that guy's deal was.
I don't remember that one.
If the first drop isn't deep enough into the theories of space and time.
All right, so
this is the long one. So the problem is, Mike, well, not a problem, but one of the things that Mike will do is take the 3-hour podcast, since it's long, he'll take some chunks out of it and make little smaller pieces that are kind of fun or useful, I guess, if you want to just show somebody's opinion on something. What would happen if Neil deGrasse Tyson went into special ops? Well, you get what we have in this episode. Former SEAL turned Columbia grad, now NASA employee. Yeah, this one was pretty neat, actually. I'm not putting it in my top 10, but it is neat to see how dudes that come out if you pass all of the qualifications and stuff, special ops, you're pretty clever and you're able to adapt. So it's always cool to see how dudes that come out of all that go to.
I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions of all of the special ops guys. Those guys are incredibly intelligent. You're not only a physical specimen and can handle pain and all of that. You got to be mentally strong, but everyone that I know, they're all really intelligent people as well.
So next we get Jeff Nichols, bodybuilder guy. I don't remember.
That was a good one.
Let's see, I was going to say this one of my ones that I would not watch. This was a guy who was a SEAL, I guess. And what's CS? Is that CAG? He might have been CAG because he seemed like he was pretty comfortable with stuff. But basically, this was all about nutrition and muscles and working out and that kind of stuff. And not my thing. At least I didn't agree with this guy. So, it was like mostly just hearing somebody else's opinion about stuff for me. This Erica Jane, I guess, is some girl that he knows because she bought a dog from him. Do you know who this one? Do you remember this one?
I remember watching probably about 15, 20 minutes. And it was one of those things, I don't know if I turned it off or had to go somewhere. I know I didn't finish it, and I haven't gone back. So I really don't remember much about it.
So she bought a dog off of him, and then she became a Real Housewife of Beverly Hills, some TV show. Right. So she's like a Kardashian or something, and now he knows her. So it's an interesting article just because it's out of nowhere. She has nothing to do with nothing. And I'm like, well, I'm going to watch this, I guess. And then it's just awesome, actually, because she's just kind of cool. And she was just married to some dude, and then they came along and said, hey, you want to do a TV show? And she's like, all right. And then, so I thought it was actually kind of neat because I would have never watched a thing about some chick who's on the Housewives or Beverly Hills or whatever. Not my top 10 or nothing, but again, just to show the range or whatever of the show. Let's see, Eddie Penny.
Fred Smith here, Golden.
Perils of a character that is a SEAL 6 team operator and devoted father who suddenly found himself taking care. Oh, this is the guy that his wife something left him, I guess. And then he ended up getting out and taking care of the kids by himself, basically starting a company.
Yep.
It was interesting, again, to show that these guys are willing to, anybody can jump. Well, I shouldn't say anybody. There's the conception that it's all about jumping on the grenade, but sometimes the grenade is getting out of the teams and carry your family. And you're taking yourself out effectively.
Some of the guys that I'm friends with the teams and different units like that, most of the people that I know that were in that scenario said that the hardest thing they ever did in life was to quit or to walk away or to transition out of it, because that's what they knew. And the hardest part of their life was what to do next. And that's what I love about the podcast. It's all about what's next.
And it's not over. And in this case, it wasn't like I'm broken or I'm worn out or I'm exhausted. None of that. It was just, I need to make this decision for somebody else besides me and not the whole country. Because it's easy to also go, oh, well, I'm doing this for the world. I'm doing this for the country or whatever. Then we get to, there's some videos in here that are shorter that he talks about different dog stuff. So that's interesting. Laura Logan, definitely in my top 10. It's one of my favorite.
Yeah, that was a really good one. Yeah.
I won't even spoil it, but basically she's South African, I think. And then she's left when she left home when she was like 14, went to Paris, and then just has had that kind of life. She just started out when she was 14, living her own life. And I don't know how old she is, but she's not 14 anymore. Benito Olson.
Okay, listen up. So we want place.
That's with these commercials every single time. Combing special operations, working canine, and marrying the two things. Oh, that's the guy. This guy has a dog thing that is just down the street from him or something. So they basically talk dogs the whole time. And I think he was like a cop or something with dogs. I can't remember. I didn't think or maybe he was but I don't think he was a SEAL. I don't remember. But anyway, they mostly talk the dog business most of the time. It was interesting, not my top 10. Dr. Jason Piccolo. I don't know what's that. With all the current political infighting.
I don't know. I don't remember that one.
This dude is like a gorilla, but he's a doctor. And he's super smart because he's a doctor, right? Longtime Border Patrol and federal agent to talk about his book and talk about other things on border stuff. There's some really, really interesting stuff about the border, and this is not a bad one. I'm going to put it in my tentatives. I'm going to remember this one and definitely add it if we don't have 10. But this is close to being in my top 10 if it isn't. Now, JP Dinnell, I don't know how to say his name. I'm not good at names. I know these guys were good friends. Let's see. I want to see a show of hands in the comments. Be honest here. Who's ever felt like they weren't where they needed to be in life? Who feels that way now? I'm telling you this now. This podcast is extremely inspiring. Do you remember this one?
I do. It's top 10 for me. Probably like mid, but maybe 5 or 6. But it's really good because it started out being something completely different than when it ended, and yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah, and I didn't like it. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. It just was like, like rock, and I'm into country. But I totally, what the hell is going on here? Come on. Okay, so I could totally see it being in the top 10. I don't know if it'd be in my top 10, but I'll leave it in there because we need 10 anyway. And it's one that I was like, I'm not going to like this because they were such friends. Or you know what it is? He's in one of these earlier episodes or something. So he was like sitting there behind the scenes while he was interviewing somebody else or something, I think, if I'm remembering it right. So anyway, I was like, it's going to be one of these where they're just slapping asses. Because whenever Mike talks to somebody he went to Buds with, they just sit around slapping ass the whole time. And I was like, oh, it's just going to be like that. But no, this guy got kicked in the nuts a bunch of times, right? And came through it.
And that's what I'm saying. The way it starts out, if you can make it past the first 15 minutes and actually get into the heart of it, it's a really good one.
Now, this guy is a Canadian something and a welder, a fitness coach, entrepreneur, and a bunch of stuff. Honestly, I don't even think I listened to this whole one because it was all about mostly about muscles and stuff, and then a little bit about. Actually, I did listen to it, but I wasn't paying that much attention to that one. You remember that one, the Canadian?
I remember that only because I remember listening to it when I was driving somewhere, so it was more like to pass the time. And I remember just saying, "Oh, okay, well, that's not what I'm going to listen to again." Kind of one of those things. Wasn't bad, but wasn't like, "Ooh, I need to go back because I might have missed something in that one." It wasn't like that.
Now, this one is Gabrielle, and her deal is she was doing fitness competitions, and then she became a doctor, and they go nuts on health and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think I watch. If I watch it, I didn't watch much of it. I think
I've watched
all of them, but maybe some of them I only like for 5 or 10 minutes, and if it doesn't captivate me right away, which most of them do. But if it doesn't, I'm like, okay, next. What's next?
This one is I agree. This one's sort of like if you were into nutrition and you were trying to get some research done, definitely listen to this one.
Oh,
it's
sure.
Almost like this other doctor one, but as far as like, you got nothing else to do on a Saturday and you're looking for one of these to listen to, it wouldn't be that one. So now he's got Sean on again. I think this one is already the second for Sean. Or maybe it is the first. This dude does his own podcast, Vigilant something or another.
Yeah, Sean Ryan. It's a good one. I like Sean Ryan. I listen to all his stuff too. So I enjoy it just because I enjoy, I enjoy Sean. He's pretty good. He's one of those guys that he wasn't in the teams very long. He was a CIA contractor for 10 plus years. And I think he was in the teams for 4 or 5 years. He wasn't in the teams very long. But he's a good listen as well, because he's one of those that really doesn't care. He's going to kind of tell you straight up whether you like it or not, and whether his team guys like it or not. He's going to say, "Hey, this guy's full of shit" or whatever. I'm sorry, full of crap or whatever. I like Sean, but a lot of people don't.
Okay, so that's a good way to say it. And I don't know the guy other than watching that and then a couple of things from his podcast. I'm going to leave it in my top 10. Although, are you put that in your top 10?
Yeah, it's a top 5 for me. Once again, but I like Sean Ryan, so that's why I enjoy it.
When I watched the Sean Ryan on his show, Vigilant something or another, Vigilant Extreme or something.
Vigilance Elite, yeah.
Vigilance Elite. Then he sits there like he's a robot on that show. He's just like, and I guess that's his thing. Like that's his just interview.
He's super laid back. Yeah, he's just really laid back.
But then you watch this, and he has like real emotions like a human. So I just don't get it. Like this, he's human, and in his regular show, which is fine. I mean, I like watching the interviews on the other one. It's just he's weird in the other one. Anyway, this just shows you what he's like. So if you've only watched him on that other one, then yeah, definitely watch this one. Since you're putting in your top 5, I'll put it in my top 10. It's a little close to being like they're too much friends with each other, but there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Now,
I want to say that they probably they might have been on the teams together. They might have been the same team or something. So their history goes back pretty good, I think.
Yeah, or maybe they might have done something. Yeah, exactly. They were somewhere together for a length of time. Now this one's Chris Osmond, SEAL Tactical Gear Company. This is the guy that owned. Dang it.
It was out in California, wasn't it? His company.
I can't remember. I can't think of it. They don't put it in here.
I want to say that he started up the gear company. If it's the same one I'm thinking about, it was the one that he got out of the teams. He's living in San Diego area, started up a gear company because all the gear that people were trying to buy, like, wasn't good stuff. So he's like, we're going to make good stuff that, that I would carry if I was on deployment or something. If it's the same one, that was a pretty interesting one. It was more the business side of things.
The problem is it's 2 episodes. So yes, it's super good. It's a little weird. The guy's a little weird, but he's got interesting stuff to talk about. And the insight to the industry is crazy cool. I mean, he talks numbers. He talks about like profits and stuff. Like, so you can't put both of them in there. So we're just going to count one of them, I guess.
The one part that I really enjoyed about it is he was talking about the struggles of starting that company and trying to find suppliers that, I want this to be quality stuff, but at what point do I price it out of the range of my consumers? And so the business side was really interesting about having to maneuver through suppliers and get the cost at the right price and still be good quality and all that. It was really cool.
And then Remy. This was a funner one that kind of farted around a little bit with this one. Did you see this one?
I'm on my phone. I can't see which one it is.
Oh, Remy.
Remy. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, that's the top 10 just because it's entertaining, I guess.
Yeah. Well, dude, born in Nigeria, and then lived in Minnesota or some shit, and then like started out living like a prince in Nigeria. His dad was like moved to Minnesota or something, and then just like normal, like go back to like living a normal life in the United States.
Kind of like then, Coming to America, the movie, Except
then you become like what, a SEAL? I can't remember. Yeah, then he was a SEAL.
He was a SEAL. It was.
That's the thing. So many of these are about the dude and like their family life or their business life or whatever. That like what they actually did sometimes comes up if it's like super critical to their being or something, or if like, you know, it's like obligatory, you have to talk about what they did. But often it's just like, you know, an afterthought, because it's just one of the reasons they know each other. It's not the reason they're talking to each other, like whatever their service was. And now Hamidi Jasm. I'm trying to remember this one. There are times when we feel defeated at our lowest, like we can't win. Most here in this country, the problems we complain about are trivial. I talk a lot about perspective on my shows and how we should use it to gain insight. In this episode, I sit down with Hamidi Jasm, aka the Terrorist Whisperer, and talk about his time growing up in Iraq during Saddam's reign and overthrowing it and post-regime. To say that perspective was gained during this one was an understatement. Okay, so this one was the one where the dude was not an interpreter. He just was a dude that lived in Iraq or whatever. He's like a taxi dude or something.
Yeah. That was one of the better ones. And I would say, honestly, it's in my top 10, but for a different reason. Because, you know, a lot of people talk about how hard their life is because their Wi-Fi is not strong and they don't have good cell service at points. And they had, you know, whatever. They had to wait in line at Walmart for 15 minutes. And if you're talking about perspective of, you know, what a normal person in America on their worst day lives like a king compared to people in other parts of the world. And so it's just, like I said, it's a top 10 for me, not because it was all awesomely entertaining, but talking about the perspective of how small this world is and what real crap that people go through in this world are. It's pretty powerful.
And where you can move, like how fluid it is. I'm not going to give it top 10, so I'm going to drop it from the list just because I suspect we're already at like 5, and we're not. If we don't both agree, I'm not going to put on the list just because it's.
No, I hear you. Because there's a lot of great ones coming up still. There's a lot of great ones coming up.
So the next one is Nick the Reaper Irving, and there's 2 from him. He was like the second guest, and then this one is the better interview. So
yes,
I think we both said that will be on
there.
And then Emily is the helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know. So that one is one of the reasons I like this podcast. That was amazing. No doubt.
That's
so she's a Cobra? No, Apache? They didn't use Cobra.
I think it was Apache.
Apache helicopter pilot, and holy crap, I didn't even know. I still don't think we should have girl pilots, but whatever. It's interesting hearing her story though. Taylor Canfield?
Don't remember that one. At least I don't remember the name.
SEAL teams are filled with ultra-competitive overachievers, men who set their minds to accomplish a goal and then can't stop until they're either successful or dead. I'm incredibly fortunate to sit down with one of them in this episode, former combat veteran SEAL, canine handler, and now NASCAR professional race driver, Taylor.
The NASCAR guy, yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I forgot about that one. He was a NASCAR driver, yep.
Yeah, it's a good one, but I'm not putting it in my top 10.
No, it's not a top 10, but it was a good one for sure.
It was interesting, and I don't listen to NASCAR anything, so it was interesting there. Tony Blauer.
I don't know anything about NASCAR. The only thing I know about NASCAR is they turn left every time. That's all I know.
Tony Blauer.
Tony Blauer, man. Like I said, I don't remember some of the names. I remember the stories, but I don't remember the names of the people.
Okay, this guy's been around for a while. What's the name of his training? Anyway, violence is a part of human nature. There are examples everyday life of woefully unprepared. There's lots of science behind it. I sit down with the legend, Tony Blauer of Blauer Tactical Systems. Tony is the real deal after 40 years of studying violence, mindset, resiliency. His program is much deeper than how to punch or choke. And he's getting aged, but this guy's been around for a while.
Do a little mobility and stretch. I pound a lot of water.
Is he a black guy?
No. Tony Blauer he's been around for a while. He did like a lot of VHSs back in the VHS days of like training. So it's interesting to see him because he's kind of like he came after Marcinko. So he was like a little baby Marcinko, right?
Gotcha. So he was one of the guys like in the late 80s, early 90s team guy. Probably.
He's older than me, way older than me, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So watching him is.
I remember that one.
I need to block some dude from my channel. Not user on this channel. So then, not my top 10. It is interesting, but I never sat around watching Tony Blauer before, and it's just interesting to see him older now. Dakota Meyer.
Oh yeah,
That was in your top
I'm
10.
partial. I'm partial because but yeah, that was a great one.
Oh, is this guy a Marine or something? Oh,
Yeah.
this guy has got the Medal of Honor. Oh, this one was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've never seen a Medal of Honor dude who's been like, they're just gonna have to say real, but he's not super happy with the Medal of Honor folks and whatnot.
Oh
so.
yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, that's a top 5 for me for sure.
All right. See, that one would probably just be hovering, but yeah, I'm going to leave it in there because of everything you just said. And now that I'm thinking,
we can
about it,
always remove someone that's like 8, 9, or 10 if we have to down the road.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So now John Norris. This guy is. There are many dark elements of society we rarely get to see light being shown upon. Some of that, if most people knew were taking place, would be up in arms legitimately taking action. This episode was one of those beaming lights illuminating a nasty scourge taking place. I sit down with Lieutenant John Norris of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Remember this one?
I don't.
Okay,
I've not seen that.
Okay, this is definitely one of the better ones. And when I remember sitting there, and I'd be sitting there like this, okay, what's next? And, some of these blew me away, just nuts. I'm like, wow, that was amazing. So at some point, I learned my lesson. I'm watching all of them, even if it doesn't, like the cover doesn't look good. This was one where I was like, really? California Department of Fish? And I'm like, I can remember going, oh, this is going to be a chore. Like this,
honestly, that's
3-hour one.
I didn't watch it. That's probably why I didn't watch it. Now I got to go back and watch it.
Oh my goodness! So here, let me finish the paragraph. I sit down with Lieutenant John Norris or whatever I don't know his name, of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, highlighting the dangerous and amazing work he and his teammates have done combating the environmentally devastating marijuana grow sites in California. A ton of riveting operational stories in this one. He talks about going above the Apple place, the place where Apple is, that stupid building that Apple is in.
Yeah.
In view of that building, there's a cartel marijuana grow, and he has to go up there and have an AK-47 battle within the site of the Apple building. That is in this episode, dude. This thing it's really neat. And Mike, we talked about the CBD. Mike is like back and forth, I think, as an individual who fought the global war on drugs to some extent and has an opinion on it. And when he talks to these people, he comes with an opinion. And I don't know if these guys are changing it or not. He's a good interviewer. You can't necessarily tell always if he's changing his mind or not. You can kind of tell after 70-something episodes the kind of way he asks the questions that his mind might be changing. But yeah, this is going in my top 10, even though it's so like you wouldn't think it. You'll learn so much in this one about what just one type of law enforcement in California. And I guess it's sort of a spoiler putting in the top 10 because all of these are spoilers. We're giving you the best of the best, but that's sort of the point, I guess.
Hey, G, I hate to do this, but I've got to jump out. I'm at work, but I've got to jump out. I'll try to jump back in later if you're still going.
Yeah, right on. That way you can probably go quicker. No problem.
Yeah, thanks man. Appreciate it. All right. Bye.
So the next one is Jason Jones. This is, again, definitely one of the best podcasts I've ever even heard, let alone one of the best on Mike's show. Must listen to. I mean, if you care about the country, it's worth listening to. This guy ran the Texas Rangers and the international criminal stuff, international crimes in Texas. Amazing information. This guy is for barbecue. This guy runs some kind of barbecue place and he makes all these different barbecue spices. This is a guy who was CIA or something like that. This guy is CIA's Jack Bauer, like a real life Jack Bauer. This guy's story was really cool. I'm not putting it in my top 10, but it is literally like talking to a guy who was in the CIA doing interesting stuff. Next, we get to Eric Maddox, Fighting Saddam. This is the guy that sat down with the man responsible for breaking the source that led to the capture of Saddam's right-hand man. It's actually pretty interesting listening to some of the interrogation or the way that they even got to the people to interrogate and then what they did with them and stuff. More tactics and insight to battle. Nick, there's no way I'm going to be able to say this guy's name. And excommunicated warrior. Rivalry between MARSOC and the SEAL teams is fierce. I'm often asked about the difference between the two. In this episode, I sat down with Nick, who talked about Force Recon and all the things Leatherneck. Excommunicated warrior. Path and struggle exists when their veterans find their way back. I'm trying to remember this one. I know I listened to it. I don't know. I'm not going to say I remember that one or not. So don't. Then we get Sam. This guy's another cop, I think. Law and Order Chicago, police officer, and then he went to become an attorney. USMC vet. Interesting story for damn sure, but not putting it in my top 10. Then you get Dude and his wife. This is an interesting one too. Getting kind of a double interview, and they've done all kinds of interesting stuff. I've seen them on a couple of other show up on a couple of other podcasts, but I'm not putting that in my top 10. Nikki, the Airborne Angel, is veteran flight nurse. Hers is interesting. I don't think I'm going to put it in the top 10, but I don't remember it enough. Rachel is a doctor or something. Modeling, nutrition, functional medicine. Yeah, she was more like a health and nutrition thing. Interesting if you're into that stuff. This one, Clint and Shane, is them slap-assing each other because they're all good friends. It was interesting to listen to a bunch of SEALs who are good friends talk to each other. But then this guy, Mike Glover, Fieldcraft Survival. That was interesting. Not one of my top 10s. Then we get retired Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher. Can't remember that one. Then we get Ephraim Matos. Pleasure speaking combat vets. Hearing battle of Mosul from ISIS after U.S. City of Death founder. I think I kind of remember this one, and it's a story that's being told. But as far as it's more like in the mess, it's not one of the top ones. This guy got shot 27 times. Amazing story. Not one of my top ones. This guy is this guy the guy that like maxes PT tests or something all the time? I think this was another health one. Veteran entrepreneur, find it beneficial and sit down with fellow veteran entrepreneurs. So this one I sit down with Nick Bear Fitness, Army officer, founder of Bear Fitness. I don't even listen to officers. I don't get paid to anymore, and I'm not gonna. So then Jeff Morris. I remember this one. This one had a lot of issues and problems. Like something happened to this guy, and it's about his motivation and getting through it. And then I ended up hearing this guy on another podcast, and they couldn't have been night and day different. So it's interesting if you know the story to hear it here, because it is different than where I've heard the story other places. Ash K, what is this one? You take a former U.S. Marine from India who gets enlightened on level with the Dalai Lama. This one was pretty interesting, and I don't think it's going in my top 10. I don't remember. Actually, this one is pretty good. It's right close to my top 10. And if Ghost ain't here to defend some of his, maybe I'll push some of his out. That one was pretty good. Cairo and the Bin Laden raid. This one just was not my favorite one. Nothing wrong with it. Just not my favorite one. Let's see. This was, I think, got this dude on twice. Nick Irving and Remy. So yeah, this was sort of like Remy was like on location somewhere. So this one was okay. This one was more of like, since he knows people, he's like, why don't we sit down and have a conversation? Yosef, this one's interesting. I never listened to an interview with this guy. This guy's a Marine, and they talk a bit about like tactics. It's not good. I don't know if I'm putting it in my top 10. We're already up to getting close to the end here. We're at number 61. This guy ran Ironman. He was like super fitness guy. Kind of interesting to hear what a human can do, but not my thing. Like he runs through a pair of shoes every couple of months, like by running them, wearing them away. Angel is one of my favorites. So I'm putting that one in there. This one was a cool story. Gangster kid from the streets, and then went over. Was he a ranger or something? And then did some stuff, and then came back, became a nutritionist, and he's still running around. I follow him on Instagram. He's doing cool stuff. This guy was talking about what it's like to be in a soldier in Ireland, and then I think he came over here and joined. Kind of interesting, but not so much from not my top 10. Jason Redmond, this guy's got a bunch of different interviews. I think this might be the first time I've heard an interview from him. Not in my top 10. This guy was in Extortion 17, I guess. I remember this one not being one of my favorites. This guy's an Army Ranger and a combat medic, and I don't remember that one being one of my favorites. How to Fight Mother Nature. I don't know what this one was. Well, this guy was active duty Air Force Special Warfare Weatherman. I think that was an interesting one, but not top 10. Super interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. I knew some weathermen back when I was a kid, though. This guy, I don't remember this one. "10 deployments with Dev Group, all while being a staunch Christian, is an impressive balance." Had the honor sitting down with Bill Rapier, serving with one of the most. So this guy was 10 deployments with Delta, I guess. That one was okay. There was a lot of insight or whatever. This one is Holly and Deal. Spent years covering war in the Middle East, so she was another of the reporters.
Syria still hasn't been is because of Iran. It's more specifically Russian backings. Fuck with them.
Yeah, I really think that was a turning point in 2000. And
I don't think I'm going to put that in my top 10. Let's see. Broken Boys Break Things. So, this one.
So I'll go flag races. I was walking back from flagging the race, and I look at the house, and my stomach just sinks. The fucking car.
Yeah, that guy had an interesting story. Sort of like some of the others. Some of these guys, they're like, oh yeah, we had a great childhood. This guy did not have such a great childhood, and still ended up going through and doing a bunch of stuff. This is the bottle breacher guy. Kind of interesting. That guy was on Shark Tank and stuff. A lot of insight, sort of like that other one where they talk about the nylon stuff. Super insightful in a different way than some of the others, which talk about battle and stuff more. So it's a longer one, I think, 3 hours. Well, maybe not the longest, but interesting. But I'm not putting it on my top 10. So let's see how many we actually have up here. And then this last one was California police officer, not in my top 10. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, I'm going to drop Clint off of there. He can handle it. He can handle doing it on his own. And who's getting the boot over here? I guess this one was pretty interesting. I think this guy. Interesting story, but if I had to drop one off the 10, it would be that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so there's a little over an hour talking about literally one of my favorite podcasts now. I've been listening to it just this year. If you missed the beginning of this whole thing, I'm going to be doing these on Fridays. I don't think they're all going to be an hour. This guy has a lot of podcasts. He has 70-something podcasts. Many of the people we'll be covering have fewer than that. A couple have more than that. Ghost jumped in because we had talked about doing some kind of a video about the Mic Drop podcast anyway. But this is certainly one of my favorite podcasts in so many different ways, as I tried to explain before. He has a long format podcast that comes out once a month. He interviews typically people that have had some sort of a combat experience or some sort of adjacent to combat experience, and talks about the various aspects of that. And it's just really a well done group of podcasts. So there's 70-something in the series. We went through all of them kind of one by one and reminisced on them. And it looks like we're picking episodes 24, 30, 32, 31, 35, 36, 39, 40, 41, and 62 as the top 10. What I'm going to do is put those into a YouTube, what's this thing called? A YouTube poll, and then we'll see if anybody or what y'all think of your favorite one of the top 10. We're going to try to do this every week. I don't think it'll take an hour every week. Like I say, we won't have a guest every week. That's kind of a special thing. We started our series out. But let's see if we jump over to the channel, since we're kind of over there already. And we scroll down a little ways. We're going to have the best of Locked and Loaded. We'll have the best of what the heck is that one? Wilson Combat, the best of Gun Freedom Radio, the best of Combat Story, another channel that does combat stuff. The best of the DC Project. We'll talk about a channel called 2A Cops, and then Riding Shotgun with Charlie. So for the next couple of months, it looks like we'll be doing these on Friday mornings. Give us some feedback if you're out here live, or if you're watching this after, let us know what you think. And what we'll do is add all of these top 10s to the description of the video, and we'll set up this poll over here and let people vote on what they think are their favorite of the Mic Drop podcast. Hope it helps out with something to listen to that's not just interesting, but offers something that you can take away from the podcast. You don't just learn a lot, you get a lot of actionable info. Till next time, thanks for watching.